Hello everyone, you're listening to the Eiffel Tower podcast. My name is Oliver G. This is a show all about sort of figuring out Paris, figuring out France, and I've been doing it for about 2 years. So if you're new to the game, you've been missing out on a lot of stuff, I must say. This show is brought to you by French Today. French Today, these guys do audiobooks. It's all about learning French. There's a whole method involved. It's not just sentences translating and then repeating them out loud. There's a whole method to it. And if you've been listening to this show before, you'd understand that. And I'd encourage you all to check out the 10% discount that you get if you book using this very website, frenchtoday.com/earful7. You got it? That will take a further 10% off everything you buy. But more about them at the end of the episode. What I want to talk about now is something quite interesting. We're about to make Eiffel Tower history. And that is because I'm going to read to you an email that I've already read out before. I got it fairly recently. Let's see, I got it from Meg. Hi, Oliver. I've been listening to the podcast while walking my dog. I love that. I love when you guys tell me where and how you listen to the podcast. Always makes my day. But I'm skipping ahead a bit. I'm currently reading a book by Mark Pryor, The Bookseller, which is set in Paris. It's about a bouquiniste who is abducted. I googled bouquinistes as I hadn't heard of them, and the old black and white photos of them got me interested to read more about them. Maybe it would be a good topic for your podcast. And would you believe it, within about a week of getting that email, I thought, that is such a good idea for an episode that I'm just going to do it. So I'm going to tell you the story about how this came about, the interview that you're about to hear, because I think it's kind of cool too. I was down on the right bank and I was thinking, I'm just going to walk up to the first bouquiniste, the first bookseller that I see, and ask them if they speak English. But first... Well, if you heard that clicking sound, that was me turning on the fan because it's so hot in Paris that I'm sweating in this tiny little studio. So before I tell you the story about how this came about, let me just give you a little bit of facts because I realize that not everyone will know what a bouquiniste is. But in short, it's a bookseller, but it's a very specific type of bookseller. It's the ones that essentially sell books along the River Seine. They're usually used books. There's a lot of antique things. As you are further along into the more touristy areas, you'll see more sort of key rings and posters and newspapers and stuff as well. But these guys are an institution, really an institution. Left bank, right bank, and people have been known to say that the Seine is the only river in the world that runs between two bookshelves, which I rather like. So a little bit of background. They've been selling books along the river since the 16th century. The word bouquiniste first appears in the dictionary in 1789, so this is nothing new, guys. And this is kind of fun. The traditional emblem of the second-hand bookseller is a lizard looking at a sword. So there's a lot of intrigue about these guys already, but I knew, because I've sort of visited these people before, I knew that there was a story to be told, and I want to go and discover it. So my idea was I'll bring the microphone and just walk up to every single one until someone wants to share their story with me. And this is what happened. I went up to the first person. I said, I was speaking French. I said, do you speak English? He said, not very well. He said, but there will be someone who speaks English. Good luck. And I said, well, let's hope they talk to me as well. And he said, yes, people can be a little bit tricky when it comes to recording and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, well, we'll see how we go. So then one of his colleagues come up. So this is the second guy. Second guy comes straight up, says, what's going on here? So he runs the stall next to the first guy. And I said, do you speak English? And he said, yeah, I speak English. And I said, great. I wonder if you'd be interested in doing a little podcast episode with me. And he said, how much are you paying? I said, well, I'm not paying anything. I just would like to chat. He said, I'm not interested. And then I sort of looked at the first guy and we smiled, and I realized that I could be in for a bit of a long walk. And then I walked along from the Pont Louis-Philippe. If you're playing at home, I walked, what would it be, eastwards, and I stopped all along the way. Anyone who wasn't busy and looked like they would chat, no one would speak English or do it. And I was kind of despairing a little bit, and then one guy said, why don't you cross the Pont de la Tournelle and try on the other side? There's more likely to be English speakers there. So that's what I did. I crossed over the bridge, and the very first person I came to is the person whose voice you're about to hear. And I said to her, parlez-vous anglais? And she said, well, I'm a native English speaker. I'm American. And I said, wow, there can't be many American women running these bookstores. or these bouquiniste stalls in Paris. And then we got talking a bit, and I said, look, hold the story. I'd love to press record. And she said, let's do it. So just a bit of practical information. If you want to go and find Sydney, her name is Sydney, you need to go right near the Pont de la Tournelle. The Pont de la Tournelle is how maybe you'd read it phonetically. Tournelle, Tournelle. It's on the, it'll be the south side of the river. And so if you are on the south edge of the Pont de la Tournelle, she's just a few steps downriver, as in a few steps to the west. You with me? Excellent. So that's where I met Sydney, and then I press record, and then you're totally up to date. So let's do it. Okay, let's go right back to the start. You're an American bouquiniste.
I am. Los Angeles.
Okay.
I mean, I'd rather claim that I'm Angelino than I'm an American.
So you're an Angelino
Oui.
among a sea of French bouquinistes.
Yes. No, désolé.
How people just ask you for a cigarette mid-interview.
Right, yeah.
But tell me, how you said it's an interesting story of how you became a bouquiniste in the city, and I said, don't you tell me until I press record. So maybe you can enlighten us all.
Well, let's see if I can give you the Cliff Notes. I don't know if you know what Cliff Notes are.
Absolutely, the short
version.
Great. Love the short
So here we
version.
go. I came here a little over 2.5 years ago, and it was partially a midlife crisis vacation, but I also came here to help save James Baldwin's house in the south of France.
Okay.
James Baldwin is my hero.
Okay.
I've read everything about him. I think he's probably one of the most important people of the 20th, 21st century. So I came here to do that. In being in Paris, there was an exhibition of rare books in my neighborhood. I walked in, I asked the gallerist, whose books are these? She introduced me to this man called Philo. We talked a minute. I didn't really even realize that he was a Hell's Angel.
Okay.
I didn't see the patch on his back.
Right.
We talked for a minute. He said, what do you do? I said, I'm a book curator. Let's get coffee. This turned into me working with him and having the stalls. He said, I'm opening these book stalls.
A Hell's Angel.
Yes.
This is Hunter S. Thompson territory.
It is. Well, he has his own publishing company called Sirius Publishing.
Okay.
So he publishes his own books. We have been working together for over a year. It's really the best business relationship ever because my books complement his books. He came here as a child with his father and had this dream to have book stalls literally on the quay here. It wasn't anywhere else. And he spent years trying to get these boxes. And I'm just this lucky woman who gets to stand here every day and sell books.
Wow.
And I sell very specific books.
So talk us through the books that you've got here.
Well, in my stall specifically, of course, I have James Baldwin, which is an obvious go-to. But I collect certain publishers, the Grove Press, which started as the Olympia Press here in Paris. I have Auster, who spent time here. I have some French authors that are now translated in English. I've got an original story about Charlie Manson. This particular copy, The Family, there's only 800 of this one out there because they got sued. I've got Henry Miller, Capote, Isherwood, and I've got great paperbacks, just things you can pick up. And then I make bookmarks and journals.
So you got who is the original hipster up there?
Well, this is actually a photo, it's like from 1895 in New York, but he is look at, I mean, that picture, it's the beard and the suit.
Right.
You know, everyone's trying to bite that rhyme.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool, okay.
Yeah.
And so just to paint a picture for the people at home, almost all of your books are in plastic covers.
Well, they all have to be covered.
Why is that?
Because, well, we're outdoors, right? You have sun, wind, rain, everything. So to protect them, this plastic cover protects from sun damage, the wind, dust, everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Is
so
that what does everybody do that? Or is it
well,
just...
yeah, almost everyone. I mean, there's some books you'll see that aren't covered, and that's just so people can look at them. But then they get damaged. As you'll see, they get damaged, and then I have to take them home, and I'm a book restorer, so then I go home and I restore them.
So let's talk about the typical. First, let's talk about what it's like to be an American. Let's talk about what it's like to be an Angelino woman among a bunch of what appears to me to be mostly French older gentlemen.
Yes.
Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah.
Do you talk to them a lot?
Oh, this is my family.
Right.
Yeah, no, this is my family. These guys scooped me up. Part of it's because of my personality. When I arrived here, I came and I painted the boxes, and I was here and introduced myself, and I'm very charismatic. I think maybe you noticed that.
Absolutely. I was drawn in like a...
Right. I'm like a moth to a flame.
Yeah, well, that works better.
Yeah, we'll mince words later. But over this time, they become my family. And it was my birthday a couple weeks ago, and we had a little birthday party here, and all the guys that you see behind you, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, they're just like big brothers or uncles or...
So there's not so much competition between you guys?
No, we work together.
Right.
Oh no, there's no competition at all.
I guess you're selling different kinds of books as well, just by
Well,
the looks
even
of it
when
from
we
here.
have the same books, it's like the gentleman there sitting, he has quite a few of the same books that I have in this booth, but there's no competition.
Right.
We're all here to make some sort of living.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that as well. A lot of, like, for people who've never sort of been to Paris or don't even know what we're talking about, the book stores are quite small. I mean, how many books have you got in your collection here? Compared to a bookshop small, I mean.
Oh, well, I mean, we're independent. We're an independent bookstore, right? So this is something, the bouquinistes have been here for over 100 years, right? We sell books because we love books. We're in the business of putting the right book with the right person. We're not here to necessarily turn a profit, sell the newest thing. It's about having a book lover approach the stall and ask, well, what should I read?
Right.
And sometimes it's a motorcycle magazine or an art book or a novel.
Right.
Where you go into a bookstore and you're overwhelmed. I mean, I love bookstores, don't get me wrong. Okay, I love bookstores. I could spend all day in a bookstore. But this is more personal because every book in here I've chosen, I've curated it. I know who it should go to. And then sometimes I'm surprised by who it does go to.
So do you think people should come in and say, hey, Sydney, well, they wouldn't know your name yet, but let's say,
well,
hey,
now
Sydney,
they may.
Hey, Sydney, I'll have a book, please. And then you'll...
Sure. Well, people ask me all the time, like, I'm traveling, I gotta sit on the train for 10 hours, what should I read?
What would you pick for me?
Well, my first question would be, and we'll go back to the English section.
Oh, I'm walking backwards here, okay.
My first question would be, well, what do you like to read? Like, what's your go-to reading?
At the moment, I'm into books about France and Paris, but that's largely because I have a podcast about France and Paris. I like a good...
So I have a great book for you.
Okay.
I have a great book for you. Very famous French writer. It's translated into English, and it's about Pigalle.
Okay.
And it's from the 50s.
And it's called Boulevard by Robert Sabatier.
Oui. And it's great. It's all the things that you think about of Pigalle, but in a different era.
I'll read the back so people at home know what we're talking about. Robert Sabatier, or Robert Sabatier, was born in...
Oh my God, I love that you did like an American accent.
I did an Angelino accent.
No, is that it? I don't know what Angelinos sound like.
Well,
like me.
I assume so.
A woman with a cold.
Was born in Paris in 1923 in a house once inhabited by the well-known poets Verlaine and Rimbaud, and spent his childhood wandering the streets dear to Utrecht and Lautrec. So we're talking Montmartre here.
Oui.
Maurice Utrecht and Toulouse-Lautrec. This is my neighborhood. I live up there.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, okay.
Good
I think I'm going to have to buy this book.
Yeah.
And it's the first edition. And how much is that?
Well, it's €35.
Okay.
But, you know, I might do a little deal for you.
Well,
we'll
that
see.
sounds like it. So, okay, that's a great... I'm going to get the book, deal permitting. But I want to know, like, when a typical tourist comes, and
Sure.
maybe you can speak on behalf of all the bouquinistes here.
Well, I can't speak on behalf of any
maybe
other
you could
bouquinistes.
try.
No, I really can't.
Okay, well, we'll speak on behalf of yourself then.
Because, yeah, I mean, everyone has their own business. So what's the question?
Right. So what I was going to say, like, what would be your advice to tourists who don't maybe speak any French, who want to buy a book or a magazine?
To anyone who's visiting France or Paris, please attempt a little bit of French.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm here 2.5 years and I'm still learning French, but I never approach anybody without the minimum.
Yep.
Bonjour,
Yep.
comment allez-vous? You know, it's just basic.
Mm-hmm.
This is for me, my experience has been, this is a country of gesture and a lot of humility in how you are when you walk into a place. You know, the greatest thing to do is just say hello. Hello, goodbye, thank you. And Americans in particular don't do this.
I've talked about this on the show before, and there's this idea, because I've had a few guests who've had similar sort of sentiments there, and the idea that some have said is that in America it's quite acceptable to walk up and smile to someone as a form of a hello.
That's bullshit.
Oh yeah?
Sorry.
That's
I don't mean
okay.
no, but that's bullshit. I mean, look, I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I'm 47 years old. Both my parents were born and raised in Los Angeles. I was taught that if you go anywhere, you acknowledge and greet the person who's in the store, serving you, whatever. This laziness of, chagrin is a greeting, that's not right. You know, we as globally are losing the idea of being humanist. You see a person, hello, how are you, goodbye, thank you. And I think the French, in particularly, still have maintained that little bit of humanist behavior. Whether it's genuine or not, it's just a simple thing. You know, I don't walk into anywhere and not acknowledge whoever's in front of me. And I didn't do that in LA either. In LA, I did the same thing.
So that's, well, in a way you did speak on behalf of all the bouquinistes there. So it worked in the end. But what about, is there a general rule for haggling over price?
I don't think there's a general rule.
But it's not discouraged, or, I mean...
No, I mean, it's, we're here trying to make a living, you know. The price is the price. I am a really good bookseller, but then I also want people to have books. So I will always offer something. Again, I can't speak for other bouquinistes.
And that's something I might have to go on and uncover for myself. But I also have a few more questions I want to ask you. Specifically, there's some things that I've heard about bouquinistes that I'm not sure are true. Someone told me, like I heard it once, that the rent on these things is like €1 a month. It's like a token rent or something. Is there any truth in that?
As far as what I know is there's not really a rent per se. What I understand is you buy them, you own them, and then that's it.
Right. And what about the books? And these are just sort of my quick fire questions here.
Sure. Go ahead.
Do you keep the books in overnight?
Can you imagine me picking up? There's 100 books here. Can you imagine me taking them home? No, everything.
I told
locks.
you I'd ask silly
No,
questions.
I know,
Sydney.
and I love it. I love a silly question. No, everything gets locked up. It's totally secure. For the most part, it's waterproof.
Right.
But everything gets left here.
Plus, you have expensive books here as well, so you wouldn't want to risk.
I just leave them here.
You don't. It doesn't bother you that someone could bust them open? Does
Faith.
that happen?
Just faith. Oh, it does, but I have to have blind faith.
Right.
I don't even know what that means, but...
Nobody does, Sydney.
Well, I mean, it's really well lit. There's cameras. For the most part, I don't know. I guess I throw caution to the wind.
Right.
You know?
What about, so you've got a lot of English books, and if you need to speak to that customer, you can just, you've got a lot of English...
That's a looky-loo. I can tell.
How can you... Okay, that's a great question.
Yeah,
How do you know when someone's a looky-loo and when they're the real McCoy?
Well, some of it is...
Blind faith?
No, some of it's just... I can tell by how they look. Part of it's that. And then how they browse through. Like, people either stop and show some interest, right? Like, they'll actually... be intrigued, or they'll just keep going. And certain tourists aren't looking for English books. They're looking for very specific Parisian, French souvenirs.
Even if they can't read them, maybe?
No, of course not. Like, that gentleman definitely just wants to take something home that says he was in Paris.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, it's great. It's just not my. It's not my thing.
Well, you do have some things like you have some. I'm looking at Playboy magazines.
Yeah,
right in front
but
of
those
me.
are English
From the 70s.
So yeah, 70s,
80s.
and then I only have one left from the 80s, but 76, the year I was born. 72
there.
72. Yeah, go
Why do
ahead.
you have Playboys?
Why not? They're amazing. But this was when Playboy still had great writers. Right. So this is why that whole saying is Playboy's not just about the naked pictures, because if you open them, the content is primarily articles. There's like,
people say they read them for the articles.
but there's like 3 naked pictures, right? So they're amazing. And why wouldn't I have them?
No, good point.
I mean, this is when women still look like women.
What do they look like now?
Kim Kardashian.
Yeah. All right. The last question I want to run by you is, what do you see as the future for the bouquinistes in Paris? Do you think it's going to continue as people turn more towards the internet? Do you think it's going to...
But that's already happened. I mean, they're not going to turn more. They can't. It's already there. The bouquinistes have been affected tremendously. That's why when you go closer to Saint-Michel and the Notre Dame, you'll see bouquinistes that have souvenirs. We're not going anywhere, right? If you love books and you want to sell books, you're going to stay here. I'm here in the snow. I'm here when it's 0 degrees. I'm here when it's 40 degrees. I sell books, period. You know, that's what I do. We're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. You know, the internet, you can't, I mean, sure, you can find things on the internet, but it's not the same thing as walking up and having me take off the plastic and you open the book. And I tell people when I'm showing them a book, just read the first page. If the first page grabs you, then you should have that book. You know, book selling is a relationship. It's something between 2 people. It's not the internet. You can't go on Amazon and speak to someone who knows the book. You can't touch it or smell it.
It's a tangible thing, isn't it?
Right. I mean, the name of my company is The Smell of Books.
The smell of books.
Right.
The smell of books or the smell o' books?
No, the smell of books.
Right. You got the F. Better Scrabble score like that, isn't it?
The
Throw that
smell
F
of
in there.
books with the SZ.
Books
Because my
with
last name is Zekley.
Sydney Zekley.
Yeah.
So that brings me to my final question.
Okay.
Sydney Zekley is, let's say somewhere out in the world there's someone listening to this episode, they're coming to Paris, they're thinking of popping in and saying hi to you. Is there anything they should know before they meet you?
Not at all.
So they walk up and say, hey Sydney, I heard you on the Eiffel Tower.
Sure.
Tell me what book to get.
Sure, just say hello. But at least, or bonjour.
Okay.
Start with bonjour, yeah.
There you go,
Yeah.
guys. Thank you very much, Sydney. I think
You're
it's time,
so welcome.
time for me to go and
Thank
buy a
you.
book, I think.
Do it. Buy a book.
there it was, Sydney explaining all about being a bouquiniste. Thank you, Meg, for the email that kickstarted this very episode. I love getting emails from you guys, especially when there's good ideas. If you want to find Sydney, once again, you can head down near the Pont de la Tournelle if you want to imagine what her stall looks like. There are plenty of pictures on the EiffelTower.com. I took a bunch of pictures. I've put them up there on the website. And I realized, I don't know if I said it anywhere in the whole episode, but green. They're green, these book-stalls, and you can see them from a mile away. You can see them even as you're going down the river on a cruise. Lastly, if you want to follow Sydney, she has an Instagram account. It's private, but it is written on her bouquinist stall, so I guess you can follow it, but it's The Smell of Books with a Z at the end, or a Z if you're an American. The Smell of Books. So follow her along. She'll have to accept you, but I guess maybe that's her way of keeping the crazies out, but go and follow her if you want more. But if you want the pictures, theeiffeltower.com. Now, this show is sponsored by French Today audiobooks. I'm going to talk a little bit about that for a moment. If you want to learn French, this is how I recommend you do it. Every now and again, I just do a sort of overall summary of what they are because I realize people might be listening for the first time. I want to sort of introduce you to this idea. Usually I talk about my progress or I talk about an interesting lesson. Sometimes I have Camille, the voice behind the books, in the studio for it's kind of become like a therapy session where I talk about all my woes of speaking French and she sort of walks me through it. But just for a general idea, if you're thinking about learning French or indeed improving your French, their website is frenchtoday.com. Now, if you visit frenchtoday.com/earful7, then they'll take a further 10% off whatever audiobooks you buy. And they're sort of in this partnership with me here at the Eiffel Tower, and we've been doing it since the start of the year. And the idea is that they support my podcast, help it exist, really, and in return, I promote their audiobooks. Luckily for me, I love their audiobooks, and I do use them. But the idea is that once a month, Camille comes in the studio and we have one of these chats. And then at the end of the episodes, I typically talk about things that I've learned. So they've got several audiobooks of different levels, starting down at 1, going all the way up to 8. And what's I think is really good about it is it's a method. It's not just repeating. The sky is blue, the tree is green or whatever. There's ways to learn it. And that's something, as I'm getting further into it now, that I'm sort of realizing and developing. The idea of this, I say the word method, it's like the way to teach you French. She has developed her own way to teach you. And you may have heard of her talk about this fairly recently, but it's this idea of focusing on the important stuff, not getting weighed down by the textbook kind of French that you might learn in high school or university. And it's a really unique sort of way of doing it. So I just want to encourage you to go check it out. There's a free audiobook if you want to go and explore, see if you like it, see if it's for you. You can find that pretty easily on the page. But if you do want to buy something, frenchtoday.com/earful7. I'm going to have Camille in the studio very soon this month. And if you guys ever have questions for her, or if you have questions about French language, I'm very happy to ask them. If, Meg, if you're still listening, you've got a good question that could turn into a good topic for a whole podcast episode, send it along. And yeah, join the fun, learn French alongside with me, and help us support the Eiffel Tower as you do it. Thanks for listening. I'll be back on Thursday with another episode. Have a lovely week.